Stuff, Holly.
All right. Well, welcome to our Work It Wednesday trainings where we bring to you real trainings to make a positive impact on your business. And this Wednesday, today, we are so excited to have our very own South Dakota broker, Josh Reese, here to train us on agent safety. So, tips to, stay safe, things you can do to mitigate risk. I was joking earlier, we should just have a training for the murderers and be like, maybe don't murder us. But because we don't have control over them and we only have control over ourselves, we'll focus on what we can do to stay alive while working with clients. So, one of the reasons we asked Josh to do this is because he has experience in law enforcement. He braved the roads and the streets of Oregon, faced Antifa, got blown up and survived. So we are very honored to have him here today. Thanks, Josh.
Absolutely. Hang on, let me get the screen share going here. Can everybody see that? I've got a new setup.
That is an amazing title.
Yes, I love it.
So I will tell you right now, I did rip the title off from a book. There's a book called The Gift of Fear by Gavin DeBecker. I highly recommend that anybody in the real estate industry, any type of professional that's dealing with the public, read this book. It is a very good book. It's really all about how can you get yourself in a mindset to try to prevent any type of violent acts from happening. And there's a ton of nuggets. So everything I'm going to talk about today is from that book. It's a very quick version because the book is pretty long. I think it's like 400 pages. And Gavin DeBecker has a very proven track record. If you're not familiar with him, he owns one of the largest executive protection companies in the United States. They do all sorts of like threat assessment trainings for large corporations. And he's like kind of like the guru of personal safety. So also my background, as Holly alluded to it, I did 10 years or just under 10 years in law enforcement in Portland, Oregon. So obviously, very safe city to be a cop in. And in that time, I was a field training officer. I also spent time on the Riot team and learned lots of really cool stuff while I was there. But this book, through my law enforcement career, really, I think there were quite a few times that the things from this book really helped save me from bad situations, or at least minimizing how bad a situation is. And that's a lot of what he talks about in this book. Um, so real quick, I just want to go over three things that everybody should remember. And the first thing is the fear that we have, it's really actually a gift. Recognize the fear as a natural alarm system for danger, not an emotion to be ignored or suppressed. So when you start having these fearful feelings, especially when you're out with clients, listen to them. There's a reason that you're having these feelings. And your intuition is that gut feeling that you get. And really what a lot of that is that your intuition fires and triggers the fear. But what it's telling you is your body is processing some type of threat before your conscious mind knows it's coming. And the thing that I will use relate to that is it's very similar to like goosebumps. When you get goosebumps, there's a reason for it. When you're out working with the public and talking to people, you get that gut feeling, that intuition. There's a reason for it. Listen to it. Now, that doesn't always mean that when you get those feelings that you're dealing with a murderer that you need to like run away from or anything. But get in tune with that intuition and trust it when you feel something. Try to start being more observant, see what's going on around you, because there's probably a reason that you're feeling that way. Um, Violence is predictable. Violent attacks are often preceded by clear warning signs of red flags. By learning to recognize these, you can avoid danger before it escalates. I'm not really going to go over anything today on what happens if you get yourself in a, violent interaction with a client and that type of stuff. Ideally, we should try to avoid that if at all possible. I guess we could do a training like I don't know how we do a self-defense Zoom training, but I'm sure we could figure it out somehow. But today we're just really going to talk about things that you can see beforehand to try to give you the upper hand, try to stop you from being in a situation that can turn into violence. Um, I think the other thing we need to understand too is like there are violent people out there. A lot of times you talk to people and they're going to tell you, oh, there's very few. There are very few, but you are going to come into contact with violent people. That's just the way the world works. And I think a lot of times we tend to try to convince ourselves that it's all unicorn and rainbows, and that's not the case. Um, that being said, be very careful. Do not get cynical. Been down that road, and that's a whole nother thing. But just know that it does happen, and it happens in every community, everywhere in this country. There's no city that has a 0% violent crime rate. It doesn't exist. So it can happen. Be prepared for it, and hope it never does. Um, the things that I'm going to talk about coming up here pretty soon, don't think that if there's a client that displays some of these traits that every one of them is going to be out to get you or anything like that. It really, you have to look at it from the context of the situation. A couple of these things too are going to be things that people do. They tend to do sometimes when they're nervous, and especially when you're meeting a new client, there's a tendency for both of you to be nervous a little bit. But ultimately, just because someone does one of these things that I'm going to talk about, they're probably fine. The thing about this is you got to look at it with the totality of the circumstances. So what is going on? All of these type of behaviors, if you start seeing multiple of these, it should just start raising your threat level that you're thinking this could, be something wrong, and get yourself out of the situation. The other thing that I really like is if you're out showing homes, especially by yourself, obviously take all the steps we talked about to be safe before the showing. But another thing I really like to do, like with my wife, we have a code word. So if I ever call her and say the code word, she knows I'm in trouble. And she doesn't show homes all that often anymore, but when she does the same thing with me. Have people that you're in contact with, share your calendar with another agent, with your spouse or something, so they know where you are, especially if you're out showing homes a lot. That's the first thing is, allowing people to know where you are or where you should be and how to get in contact with you. And I like the whole code word thing too, because if you are in a bad situation, you can say, hey, my spouse is calling, let me pick it up. Otherwise, they're going to know something's wrong. It allows you to pick up the phone, say whatever the code word is, it means you're in trouble, and then they can take, if they know where you are, they can take the appropriate action to get you the help that you need in that situation. So let's get into it. So the first one is called forced teaming. And this is when clients will try to make you guys a team. They try to use words like you're doing this together, and try to force that feeling of togetherness, closeness, teamwork, all those type of things. This is one of those ones that a lot of times, especially early in a relationship with a client, when there's some nerves, some excitement, you will see this because we have a tendency as people just to try to connect with people that we're talking to, especially first impression type situations. So you will get a little bit of this, but when they take it over this top and they really start talking about like, we're going to buy this house together and those type of terms, it should be a red flag for you to be like, wait a second, what is going on here? Are these people just nervous? And a lot of times too, what I'll ask people, is, hey, can you define that for me? So because sometimes they'll use a term that might be like a forced teaming thing, and you're like, can you define it for me? And then when they start talking, you're like, no, they're not doing this on purpose. Um, Most of the time, when people are out to do some type of violent act, they're going to be doing these things on purpose. They're planned. They're, they have practice with these. Criminals don't just go from like, straight to abducting real estate agents. It's a progression. And so these traits that they're doing are done on purpose, and it's because they've learned. It's basically the easiest way to manipulate people. The other thing that's really interesting about this book too, that I will tell you, is if you look at a lot of these, they've been used as sales tactics by like sales gurus. So a lot of these are like rapport building type activities because it really is kind of a way that you would manipulate people. And so as we're going through these, kind of look at this as like you know, some of the sales tactics that you hear by some of those sleazy gurus online are going to have some of these same things. So the first one, force teaming, basically trying to align, the client is trying to align themselves with you to help lower your defenses a little bit more because you guys are on a team together. Charm and niceness. Now, this is one of those ones, once again, there are just some nice people out there. There's some people that they're not looking to hurt you, they're just very nice. And there's some people too that when they get nervous in a new situation, they are overly nice. So, but when you start seeing like force teaming with excessive niceness more than most people, like those are the type of things. Um, Sandy, Holly, and I yesterday had a conversation, and Sandy made the comment of like the creepiness meter was off the charts. This is the type of stuff too to look at, like when you're talking about calmness and niceness, the creepiness meter. I think this is one thing too, women are a little more in tune with than men, is having that creepiness meter on, you know, where, how creepy somebody is. I don't think men really get that a whole lot. I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of oblivious to this one. I just kind of overlook it. But it's something you should really pay attention to. And once again, listen to your intuition. If the creepiness meter is off the charts, it might be time to get yourself out of that situation or do something to mitigate the risk. Have other people go to a showing with you, those type of things. Too many details. This is actually also a great one when you're qualifying leads without, you know, like on the phone. Most of the time, if somebody's going to lie to you, they're going to try to lie in a manner where they're giving way too many details. And a lot of times, those details might not even be super relevant to what you're talking about. But if you're at a showing and you're asking somebody the typical questions about the house, the layout, and those type of things, and they're going into like their life story and giving you way too many details about their family and how they're going to utilize it and everything, it's something to be aware of. A lot, sometimes you might just have a client who's very excited. You know, they've been living in an apartment for a long time and they're very excited to move into a home. But when they start sharing way too many details and going way more in depth, and I think the baseline for this too is to look at other client experiences that you've had and judge them based off others. So if you have someone that just way too over the top, more than someone, that should be a clue that, you know, maybe this person is up to no good. The other thing with this too that I've found, sometimes these people might not necessarily be out to get you violently, but this type of behavior really happens a lot of the time too with people who are doing something that they know they shouldn't be doing. And an example of that is you get somebody on the phone who's working with another agent and they shouldn't really be talking to you, but they're going to have a tendency to try to over explain the situation to try to get you to do what they want you to do with helping them. So, like I said, this is a really good one, I think, too, when you're vetting leads on the phone, when you're asking people questions about pre approvals and all those type of things. Um, but in a personal setting, if they're going into too many details that kind of go way beyond your normal client interaction, just something to keep in mind. And once again, with all of these, you start putting all these red flags together. And at some point, you need to start thinking, okay, how do I minimize this situation? Either get yourself out of the situation. You know, a lot of times too, just picking up the phone and acting like you had a phone call to remove yourself from the room. Um, there's been times where I'll be showing a house, I'll start getting a little bit of a hinkiness feeling to it, and although it's not enough for me to leave, what I'll do is I'll remove myself. Like if we're in one area of the house, I'll remove myself, say, hey, I'm getting a phone call. I'll go to the kitchen. I'll go to an area of the house that's more open, where if something does go down, I feel a little bit more protected. I have escape routes. That's one thing. As you're touring homes, be thinking about escape routes. You know, it's always better to have a plan and not have to use it than when something goes bad, not have a plan. So as you're walking through homes and you're getting these feelings, if you see yourself walking back to a corner where you're going to be trapped, maybe it's time to put yourself in a position where, you know, you're upstairs in a living room by the front door, or even go stand on the front porch to take your phone call. A lot of times too, just removing yourself from the situation will give your brain a chance to get some oxygen, think a little bit clearer, and you can plan for what the next steps are. If you're not comfortable going back in the house, just stay outside. Let the client tour the house, and when they're ready to come out, let them come out. Your safety is the number one priority, and you have to do whatever you need to do to feel safe. So don't ever hesitate. If I ever got a call from a client that was upset that an agent that I managed did something for their safety, I would have that agent's back to forever, because your number one priority is to protect yourself and make it home at night. No commission is worth, getting yourself in a position where you get hurt. Uh, Typecasting. This one is a very interesting one, and this is actually one that's used in the book. He talks about where these studies came from, but typecasting is the number one red flag used by serial killers to try to gain trust with people before they kill them. Um, and basically, what this is, it's somebody using an insult to try on themselves to try to gain sympathy from you. So, a lot of times, like in real estate, an example would be, oh, you would never help me buy a house because I'm too ugly. Or you would never help me buy a house because I have no money, and those type of things. And it's basically an insult against the person. And what they're doing is they're gauging your response. What they're looking for is they're looking for someone who's sympathetic and someone that goes, "Oh, it's okay." That's what they're looking for. And once again, it kind of goes into that forced teaming thing. These things are all planned to try to make you lower your guard, and will put yourself in a situation where they have easier access to do whatever bad thing they want to do to you. Loan sharking is giving unsolicited help. This one is kind of a struggle for me because like I've had clients occasionally, like we'll go to a showing, especially when I know somebody, and they'll show up with a cup of coffee. They'll show up with a donut or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, when you have people who are giving you unsolicited help, unsolicited gifts, especially early on in a relationship, it should kind of be a red flag. This is also one too that I will tell women to be very careful of, because this is one of the big things with men who are taking advantage of women on like date rape situations and things like that. They'll use this very, very well to try to get the woman to lower her, um, perceptions, and they'll fall into this. So this is another one that I think is very, very good, more outside of just real estate, but in life in general. If people are early on in a relationship giving you a lot of gifts and stuff, it's a red flag that's not normal. So watch out for those things. But in a real estate setting, I've seen it with clients giving gifts. I heard of one, and this one I want to say the most recent agent that was killed in a situation like this was up in Canada. Um, I can't confirm this, but I did read one article that was talking about how that whole situation started. And the suspect that ended up murdering that agent in Canada, showed up with a very expensive watch to a very first showing. And that was his gift to this agent. And she actually called somebody to tell them, and they were like, well, that's kind of weird. And her response was basically along the lines of, I know, but it's a really nice watch, and that must mean this guy has money, so he's going to buy a really nice house, and my commission check is going to be large. So that's one thing, like loan sharking in a real estate setting is normally connected to money, because the person is trying to make you think they're affluent, they're going to buy a big house. Um, and once again, this might not be to commit violent acts, but it might be to commit some type of scam, similar to the Ponzi scheme we talked about yesterday. I'm sure when that guy was building out that Ponzi scheme, he was using a lot of these tactics to try to manipulate people and get them to do what he wanted. Um, Unsolicited promises. So this would be like if you have a real estate client that is making really weird promises outside the real estate transaction. I tried to think of a real good example for this and I couldn't, because sometimes, we'll have those clients like, oh, hey, I promise I'll get you that paperwork back. That's not really this situation. These are like unsolicited promises. The best one I could come up with is, oh, if we close this transaction, I promise I'm going to give you referrals. But I didn't even really like that one because I've seen a lot of people do that. So just always be aware of when people start using the word promise, especially really early on in a relationship, because let's face it, it's one of those overused words that's used to gain trust very quickly. But really making a true promise shouldn't happen really early in a relationship before you really have got to know this client. So just be aware when clients start using the word promise, it should be a red flag. Be like, what are they actually saying here? And once again, this is a situation where I will ask clients, like, can you define that for me? What do you mean by that? And a lot of times, the way they answer that question too is going to either give you a red flag or more of a okay, this is kind of just harmless behavior. They're nervous or whatever that is. This is the biggest one. It's discounting the word no and refusing to accept rejection. I think, especially from a real estate standpoint, this one's big because if you just have a client that doesn't want to listen to you, it might not have anything to do with realtor safety or anything like that, but it's probably a client that you don't want to work with. If they're not going to take your advice, they're not going to, I don't know how many times early in my career I'd have that person, we'd be showing homes, and I'd be like, this is a terrible idea. That offer, no, that offer is not going to get you the house. They don't want to listen, they just move on. So from the first standpoint, it's kind of a way to, I think, find out clients that you don't want to work with. But ultimately, if you've got a bunch of these other red flags we've talked about, and then it's a person that's discounting the word no and not allowing you to say no, it's definitely a situation that you need to get out of. This is one of those things too that when they have interviewed criminals, like the baddest of the bad criminals, they all have this. They do not want to be told no and they don't want rejection. And so, um, you know, it's something to be aware of. I think a lot of times, it's fine to tell people no, and how they react to that is really, should tell you how you need to treat them, or if you just need to get yourself out of the situation, or out of the client relationship. If it has nothing to do with violence, it's just saying no might not be a client you want to work with. So that's all I got for today. Pretty quick. Do you guys have any questions about any of that? Is there any
I mean,
This is really helpful.
mhm.
And I have a story to share though after Holly.
Go
Yeah,
for
no,
it, Emily.
yeah, go ahead, Emily.
Well, this like reminds me so much of when I first started real estate and any client or any lead, I would always like no matter what, like put up all my time. And I remember I reached out to Holly this one time where there was a client from California that wanted to buy like this 1 to 2 million dollar home. And it reminded me of what Josh said. Like he shared like so many details, and I started to trust him. And it got really scary because then I felt like there was like this attachment uh when really on the other side he was just a person that was trying to scam and waste my time. And then when he called me, I was on the phone with him for, I'm not even kidding, like an hour or more. And as a new agent, I felt like saying no was not doing like a good job, as a realtor. But looking at it now, I'm like, that was a huge waste of time. And I could have avoided that way sooner. And I was actually looking for the text too, and in which I found it. And he was framing me that once I asked for proof of funds, he was like, we can give out proof of funds, but not to someone that we have not even spoke to once, even though it was a recorded call and I had, all of that for my records. And then also saying my behavior was unprofessional, asking for proof of funds. and that he would report me to Holly. And in which immediately I reached out to Holly because I was like, what the heck? Like, this is not me at all. And then he was like, so until we find another agent that is a lot more experienced than you, Emily, and a lot more professional than your broker, um, then I will end up reporting you and da 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 and all of this. And so it was making me feel very scared. And then I wanted to, keep resolving the issue, even though the problem here is that he's not an actual client.
I remember that, Emily, and I remember the calls and I remember the text message exchange and the fear and because first it was like safety, and then he like trapped in, and they always bribe you with $1 million listings. They're never like, I want to see that $89,000 house, right? Like it's like this like unattainable, like, oh my gosh, like once in a lifetime opportunity. And then they threaten to take it away or tarnish your name because it's so easy to do. We see it. It's a scam I want to talk about, right? Like, but you handled it with grace, as you always do. You took my, instruction. We ended up just like blocking the guy and he went away, if I recall. But, not after terrifying,
Yeah, he
um,
basically vanished.
yeah. So
Brian on Twitch says someone just being socially awkward versus someone actually making you feel uncomfortable. Like, I think that was really good because we all have that gut feeling. And I can truly say that anytime I haven't trusted my gut, it has gotten me into trouble. It's gotten me into trouble with like relationships. It's gotten me into trouble with just regular decisions, business decisions, anything. We are given that, Brian called it lizard brain. We're given that lizard brain, gut instinct for a reason. And one of my previous favorite podcasts called Crime Junkies, they used to say, be weird, be rude, stay alive. And it's so like, I feel like being polite, and also for me it's always been being embarrassed to cause a scene would be like the thing that ends me up dead, really. So yeah, be weird, be rude, stay alive. But Josh, I'll be honest, Holly and I were joking in the chat and on Twitch and everything. We're like, holy shit, is this a dating seminar? So it's like Josh Reese is the relationships expert we didn't know we needed.
exactly.
I mean, I think it is interesting though, because there's a lot of parallels and these type of behaviors. That's why that book I think is so important for people to read in any profession. As just, my wife, she read it and she was like, I took a lot out of it just because you're dealing with people. Um, and I think we forget, like, the people, the real bad criminals that want to do, they're a small percentage of people, but they're using learned behaviors that they've used and they've seen to manipulate you. The other thing that I want to talk about too, and Emily brought this up with the pre-approval letter. I have seen so many agents that get a pre-approval letter and immediately just trust that person. Like, we've been trained that that pre-approval letter means everything. And I always ask people, how often do you actually call the number on the pre-approval letter and see if it's legitimate? But a lot of times, and that's one, I don't have any stats to back this up, but um, if you want to take advantage of a real estate agent, make a fake pre-approval letter, and as agents, we need to be vetting those, because I think all too often, once we see the pre-approval letter, oh, they're great, we're good to go. But it's like, we don't very rarely call the lender. And so, that's another thing too, is don't allow, the big proof of funds letter that they give you, the pre-approval letter, don't allow that to short circuit your intuition too. Still take all the steps that you normally do to keep yourself safe.
I would, and those are all great points, Josh. Even if it's a local lender, like, how do you know it's not fraudulent if you don't pick up the phone and verify, right? So, um, and my takeaway is trust no one. Exactly. And, it's amazing the parallels, because it is true, like, whether it's men or women in a dating situation, like, again, learned behaviors, they've learned how to manipulate to get what they want. And that's how some of us get into these terrible relationships. So, same thing with clients. But circling back, I would be remiss if I also didn't say to not drop your guard. You know, I've been doing a lot of research on crime, and I know from other conversations with real estate agents, it's not always just the first time you meet someone they're going to bash you over the head and take all your money or rape you and leave you for dead. In one story I read about last night, the real estate agent had worked with this guy for a couple of months and showed him 6 or 7 properties before he took the first opportunity. When she bent over to put the key in the lockbox or do something with the lockbox, he took a thing out of his boot and bashed her over the head with it, and then she fell, and it was a whole thing. And then I managed an agent once before my time. She had told me a story about how she was sexually assaulted, and it was weeks after she had shown this guy homes. It wasn't until he got her out in the middle of nowhere. She had dropped her guard, didn't think anything of it. At the first opportunity, he assaulted her in the kitchen. And so I hate saying that, but you never know, right? Bad actors are bad actors, and sometimes they're waiting for the opportunity, and it means building that trust with you. And it's more than just a one-time thing. It's gradual over time, and then, boom, things change.
I think one resource that Anne always reminds me about that I always forget about is Forewarn.
I am oh yeah. Forewarn is like game changer. And it's funny online, I always see people like me looking at my phone, not answering it, searching the number first before I actually take the call. Is it some creep that's got, 107 charges on him? Because that really is like you got to see it if they have charges for, fifth degree theft when they were 18, that's different. If somebody has assault last year, I'm probably not going to want to work with them. So, yeah, swear by forewarn.
And that's one tool in the toolbox because there's so many people that just haven't been caught. Or like Josh said, they've been working their way up to this, right? They've been experimenting with neighbor kids and God knows what. And this is
Mhm.
their first time, thinking, oh wow, a real estate agent would be a great target.
Here's the other
So
thing though, I want to kind of like, you know how Emily, she was like worried and she felt like she was doing something wrong or
yeah.
whatever. I want to kind of put this in perspective. If you ever have that feeling, I want you to think about like, would this person be saying this to their gender? Like, would they be writing this message to somebody of their gender? Like somebody, like, is this directed at me as a realtor, or are they trying to like get me, you know? Once I've been able to put it in that perspective, like no no real client, ladies, is ever going to text you, hey, that's not a real lead. Nobody starts off saying, hey. Nobody starts off texting a male realtor, hey. So there are things that you need to ask yourself before you start, before they bait you with the whole like, oh, well, as you're not going to talk to them, oh, well, I was thinking about buying this house or whatever. Like, start to really look at what they're saying to you and would they say that to a male realtor or men. I know ladies have done the same thing, right? So I just wanted to make that clear too.
It makes my hamsters are running in my brain because Rose, as a new agent, I'm like, but then there's this and there's this and there's this. It's like keep both doors locked, like when you're showing a house. I'm horrible at it. The other day I was showing a house. Um, And I had opened up both doors because I was waiting for my clients to show up. I was turning on all the lights, getting it ready for them. And I heard a knock. And I'm like, what the hell? And I saw a car in the driveway that wasn't their normal car that they drove. And I'm like, oh, shoot. So I'm over there, like closing the door, locking it, wondering if they came in a different door. And I go outside. It was them in their car. It was just a different car that they've never driven before. And I'm like, did you guys just buy that? Because if you're buying a house, you don't buy a new car. That's a whole separate story. And they're like, no, no, we've always owned it. And I'm like, thank you. Did you guys knock on the door? And they're like, no. And I'm like, oh, the house is haunted. But then I was like all these things, I did not set myself up for success. And like they do tell you, even when your clients come in, a lot of people will lock the door behind them. But then it's like, if your client's the one attacking you, then you can't get out. So you really need to find your comfort zone, but be smart. Like that's so important. And like, Holly, you don't go into basements. Didn't you say that? Or you won't.
I often don't, and for a variety of reasons. One, I did fall down a flight of stairs in 2020, so I'm traumatized. But also, yeah, I mean, why? Like, why do I need to go? They know it's a basement. Like, I don't typically go down there.
I usually am like, go check it out. Let me know if there's anything you think that needs my attention. Really, there's that's what an inspector's job is, if they are that concerned. So well, go ahead, Josh. What you got?
I just brought something up that I think is really important. If you guys are showing vacant houses, are you like walking around the perimeter of the home before you actually go inside?
Yes.
Because that's one thing that I think a lot of people. So in Portland, if anybody knows, the homeless problem is a big issue, right? So, but we would have agents that would like go to show a house. They'd walk in the front door. Next thing you know, they'd be face to face with some homeless squatter in there. And if they would have walked around, they would have saw there's a window broken. That's one of those things like preventative. You see that window's broken, you now have like, okay, I'm not going to go in there and call listing agent, and take the appropriate steps. But that's one thing I don't see people do, especially with vacant homes, is like walk. But I even think even something where it's not vacant, walk around the outside of the house. See, is it actually secure before you go in there?
And if you ever go to a house that a door is like already unlocked when you put the key in, always take a step back and think about your situation, because it's happened to me where I'm like, did the listing agent forget not the listing, did the somebody forget to re-lock the door when they were finished, or did somebody break in? And so that's always keep consistent awareness. But yeah.
I think one thing might be helpful is always have them in front of you,
Mhm.
like where you can see them, and maybe, okay, see the back doors in the back, you have an exit in the back, and they cannot do anything where you cannot see them.
Mhm.
And you're in that, like, so they're in the bedroom and you're near the door of the bedroom.
Yeah.
Like, you're never like locked in, like they don't have the exit. You always have the exit. Yep. Very good, Rose.
Uh, well, it's funny. I always set ground rules before I show a house, but it works for this too. I'm always like, hey, I just have a few ground rules. Just a reminder: stay together so you can talk about what you're seeing, and you're seeing the same things at the same time. But also, if you think about it, it's easier to control the chaos versus if they go in different directions, right? And then, just because I have to follow through on my thought, I also tell people as soon as it's a no, let's move on, because I hate wasting my time. Like, nothing drives me battier than people that are like, this isn't going to work for us, but let's spend another 20 minutes in here. Look at the basement and the upstairs. And like, you fucking kidding me? But anyway,
Yeah.
I digress.
That's a good point though, the stay together thing. Brian he's been commenting a lot on Twitch. He also says predators take advantage of the human tending to try and avoid conflicts, right? But he was over last night, we're hanging out, and we were talking about how like one person you're much more mistrusting of. Two people, you tend to let your guard down even further. So like at what point, like don't, just because it's like more than one person, don't just think that it's automatically a perfectly safe situation, even if it is a male and a female or whatever. And like God willing, none of us will ever be in an unsafe situation. However, we are in the we're in the industry where it is one of the easiest to attack, just like hookers, right? We are in one of the easiest to attack, kill, move on, whatever. And so maybe we should give training to prostitutes.
I
Yeah.
mean, add it to our
Do a
list.
service to the world, but seriously, like, and great takeaway. But honestly, I did want to say that though, like, just because it's more than one person doesn't mean it's safe. It means they outnumber you. And there have been plenty of cases out there. We're definitely going to do one of the true crime cases where a couple was, you know, she was showing a house to a couple and didn't come out of that house alive. So, there are lots of things that we can do. And the last thing, Rose, since you talked about practical tips, I never park my car in the driveway if I can possibly avoid it. If there's like some situation where the only place to park might be the driveway, then I'm parking on the outside of, like, I'm blocking their car in. nobody's blocking my car in, right? Make
Yes.
sure your car is not blocked in wherever you're parking. So that was one more practical tip that I had. Does anybody have anything else before we close us out?
Yeah, I just when you're thinking about the whole sphere of safety, um, it's gone.
That's okay.
I
That
thought,
happens to
but
me too. I almost feel like it's a veteran thing. I swear to
it,
God.
it well, and it does come from like OPSEC trainings and stuff, right? And so a lot of us were kind of raised with like safety in numbers. Um, but oh, that's what I was gonna say. Okay. So military training, right? Like if you're feeling like you need to protect yourself with a weapon, right? Don't take that step if you're not fully committed and prepared to fire it as soon as you pull it out. Because if you hesitate at all against a predator or someone that is trying to hurt you, they will take it away from you. Do not ever get a weapon and think that that is going to protect you if you are unwilling to immediately fire.
And shoot
That's
to kill.
Shoot to
and
Yes.
kill,
shoot
right?
and shoot to kill. Yes.
That's,
Um,
I was going
and
to talk about the guns with that because I carry and I think
I
about
do
it
too.
often. And I'm like, especially like open houses. I think I trust everybody. I'm like a golden retriever. But the second a creep comes in, I know where my purse is and I know how fast I can get into it. So keep
Oh
going,
yeah.
Alicia.
So I carry mine in my waistband, especially like so way back when I was on the team I was on, we had that listing and it was a shady listing in Fort Dodge. And when I was getting asked to go up there and represent and host open houses at that particular listing, that's actually when I purchased my 9 mil. And it stays in my waistband, but I'm not afraid to fire,
Mhm.
and I have military training, but I will tell y'all, okay, like it doesn't matter how often you go to the shooting range or go practice. Okay, there is a difference between using it on another living creature. And if you don't know for certain that if your life is in danger that you can cross that line and harm another living creature, do not get a gun.
Mhm.
I think another good class to do would be to have um like have those types of like laws in mind about when is the okay, it's like better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6 type thing, but also you do need to have your state laws in mind before you do, get a little trigger happy. Make sure you've kind of have a mental checklist of what you're allowed to do in your state. In Iowa, it's stand your ground, and in other states, they have to, basically have, be fucking 100 pounds more than you and have a bigger weapon than you and be on top of you and have all these things before it's like, could you really, really have pulled that trigger? Go ahead, Ann.
I have a question for you, Sandy, and Holly, especially. Do you guys know specifically in Iowa, if you are protecting your house, not just as an agent, are you able to, like, when I was taught in our carry class, you cannot go in your garage to protect your home. Have you ever heard that you have to be within the walls of your main house to protect your house? If somebody's just in your garage, that's
When were you in that class?
that was 2020. Yeah, 2020.
The law has changed since
Okay.
to stand your ground from castle,
Hmm.
the castle law, to stand your ground. So stand your ground is a lot more lenient. Brian says most self-defenses include the house and the curtilage, but
Thanks, Brian.
that's even your car in Iowa. But really in Iowa, it's so much as an I feel threatened. Um, but you have to be prepared to very much defend that in court and stuff like that, which is a fucking bitch with lawyers and costs and all that stuff. But again, we're talking about your life at stake versus, some
Mm.
costs and things. We
Yeah,
my
worth it.
Rico knows how to establish GoFundMe's.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say go fuck. Okay, anyways.
I was gonna say, okay, when we get arrested, y'all, what I heard is use your one phone call and call
Yeah.
Sandy Lynn Burnett
No,
when you
call
get arrested for standing.
712-264-5678.
6, 7, 8.
And
That's a
one
good
of us
place
will
to
get
stop.
back to you as soon as possible.
I think that's a good place to stop because we could go on and on and on and talk about
That's a
working
whole
for-
other training, but I think it would be a good one to put together.
Absolutely. All right, awesome. Well, hey, when in doubt, reach out. Message us if you need us. We are here for you. We all started this morning with a blank slate at 0. So go out and talk to a buyer, a seller, or an agent today. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.